Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me is my good brother here in the temple, coming to us from Distorted Illuminations, good brother Monarch.
I have no weird random aside to open with today. It's good to be back.
Yep. So, after finishing up with Shattered last week, it is once again that time for the Between Seasons one-shot. And this time around, I ended up calling an audible for what I initially had planned, and instead went with this one, because this was a project I had been keeping my eye out on for several months. And the main reason I hadn't covered it sooner was language barrier. It hadn't been translated into English yet. Now, fortunately, that is being amended. There's plans on they're in the process of launching a backer kit campaign, which will be going live, I think, next month. And of course, the Quickstart, which was how I first found out about this project, is also has also been translated. And if anyone's curious, they can find the Drive-Thru RPG link in the description for this, if you're watching this on YouTube. For those of you who are watching on Twitch, I will put in the description, and hopefully Twitch's bots don't flag me for posting links.
Twitch bots confuse me sometimes.
They confuse everyone. Now,
I wonder if Twitch understands the Twitch bots.
Only in the way a tech priest understands technology. Now, I will admit that I am not 100% going in blind, but I am going in mostly blind just in terms of the premise. The unfortunate thing is that the presentation of this means that one of the potential Geek Watch topics that I had, I'm going to have to shelve, which was all about turning standard fantasy classes into power armor types, or reinterpreting them as such. And that's kind of what Knight does. So there goes
Yeah.
that. I mean, I still might do it. I just won't do it for a while. I mean, at the earliest, I might try and revisit that idea in like winter. But this particular quick start runs at about 36 pages. Oh.
And about half of that is a kind of pre-made session.
Yeah. The introductory scenario, an arc in the dark, we are going to skip. For the same reason we always skip scenarios in these things. I don't want to do spoilers, and with a lot of scenarios, there's not a whole lot to dissect, especially scenarios in quick starts, because, well, they're the equivalent. It would be like critiquing a demo or a beta as if it's the full game. I mean, you can do it, but is it really worth it?
Yeah.
So, I do want to. I will note this. I appreciate that there is a table of contents. I also appreciate that they've got some damn good art on this, which is, just look at the cover, for God's sakes. And I will admit that the aesthetic of doing medieval or close to medieval in modern or futuristic tech is always an aesthetic that I will find interesting. You know, the idea of doing, say, knightly armor using future or magitech.
It is a beautiful looking book. Like, I did skim it a little bit. This is some fantastic artwork.
I will also note that when it comes that the I know some people. I know when it comes to some fantasy games, people have dismissed the idea of playing superhero like characters, but to that, I prefer to go the opposite route. Uh, there is a table of, like I said, there is a table of contents. I kind of wish it could have been hyperlinked, but I'm not going to lose sleep over a 36-page document not having bookmarks or hyperlinks. That's not fair. But after a preamble on the credits, we open up with "What is Night?" And I do like that they have 9 little pillars: the end of a world, epic horror, modern knights, difficult choices, in-depth character creation, an extensive customizable arsenal, unbridled action, intrigue and secrecy, and adventure settings. If
No, I
anything,
don't think we really need to go through and read each one of those, but it's nice that there's a very firm setup for what this game's wanting to do.
also I just realized what this game is trying to do.
What?
It's Hellgate London without the shit.
I'm not actually sure what that is.
Aside from a cockroach, because that game won't fucking die. Just when I think the Hellgate London IP is dead, somebody decides to try and revive it. But Hellgate London was the product of some ex-Blizzard North devs, and it kind of turned into a bit of a shit show, and it's a long-ass story that I do not have the time nor the faculties to try and summarize. The original version died, and then versions of it kept cropping up over the years, which is why I call it a cockroach. You should know a thing or two about that. You were watching TNA.
I seriously don't know how that company's still around.
Mm-hmm. But then we have a introduction to the world of Night, about it taking place in the year 2037, following a series of events. Um, one of Starting with the immortality and the Red Plague, then that where a secret to immortality was discovered in South Africa. Um, he tried to when he figured it out, he tried to destroy his research before the rest of the world was made aware of it, but too late. Um, and then a bacteria bomb fell on the East Coast, which created an epidemic. Uh, then the a bunch of countries in Asia banded together to form a union called the Asian Dragon, except for Japan, which started a blockade. The blockade didn't last because a security company called Nodachi had decided to make their own move, and every head of state of the dragon was abducted, and that was used as basically a hostile takeover, so that Nodachi became the standing army of the dragon. And then a phenomenon called the anathema showed up, which ended up screwing up a lot of aspects of the world. Some people had fled arcs, and in the midst of all this, 24 people who referred to themselves as immortals had shown up. I do want to read off the sources of inspiration that they list off on this sidebar. A rough estimate of meta armor strength: Iron Man, both film and comics; Pacific Rim; Guyver; and Appleseed. Not too bad choices. Um, as far as general ambiance, Judge Dredd, the latest film in the comics. I do like that I have to clarify that so that people don't think this is going to be like the Stallone version, which I give that version a lot of shit, but at the very least, Stallone himself has admitted that he views it as a missed opportunity. Oh. The Choma Zone cycle, which I haven't read, Last Man Standing, uh, and Equilibrium, Sin City, and the Mutant Chronicles role-playing game. Mutant Chronicles is really good. See, as far as the organization known as Knight, the whole of the Arthurian legend, Shield, the Marvel organization created in Strange Tales number 135, and Warhammer 40k Space Marines. As far as the Darkness and its denizens, the sources of inspiration listed are Blame, Biomega, and Knight of Sidonia, all by Tsutomu Nihei. Nihei deserves his own little spot, even though he hasn't had a lot of his work animated. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure if his work is adaptable. Like it's a bit. If you've never read Blame as far as a manga, it leans heavily into atmosphere. Atmosphere can work very well in a manga because the pace is up to the reader. It's a little bit trickier to have that work in a animation. I know that Blame got a animated movie on Netflix. I do not acknowledge that. Uh, anyway, it also mentions Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away, as well as novels by Clive Barker and Stephen King, and horror films ranging from The Exorcist to Wreck. So it looks like we have a fair bit of body horror and just strangeness. But then we have the organization known as Knight. The Knight is one of the few effective ramparts against the forces of the anathema and all the horror accompanying it. The organization's members are generally viewed by the people of the Arks and the Free Territories and even by the Dregs as saviors, bearers of light and hope. And we have history of the organization. The Knight is the result of the efforts of two men known most commonly by their assumed names, Merlin and Arthur. The former created the famed meta armors, and the latter demonstrated their effectiveness by single-handedly putting an end to the darkness hanging over Dublin. This great feat allowed the two to acquire the support of the immortals. Arthur and Merlin founded Knight in London's Westminster Palace and named it Camelot. They received enough funding to create first 100 and then 1,000 meta armors. There was no lack of candidates, and now only the most heroic of aspirants have the honor of donning one of the 14 armor models devised by Merlin. Then we have structure. Knight is currently made up of 1,000 combatants in meta armor and around 15,000 civilian personnel. The paramilitary group has a hierarchy relying on honor, respect, and principles based on Arthurian legends of old. Arthur leads Knight as its liege, with Merlin as his advisor. Knights of the organization are sorted by divisions, each of which is under the orders of a Knight of the Round Table. Kay leads Ogre Division, specializes in bringing the fight to the darkest corners of enemy territory. Gawain is the head of Giant Division, producing and maintaining both meta armors and their arsenal while researching and developing new techniques to battle the darkness. Lamorak is responsible for Gargoyle Division, Praetorian guards tasked with protecting valuable members of the Knight, public figures, and civilians alike. Lancelot leads the head's Dragon Division, focused on despair and those who have succumbed to it. Palamedes is the head of Corrigan Division, the intelligence branch of the Knight. Dagonet founded Cyclops Division in an attempt to understand the anathema's inner workings. Bohort leads Griffin Division's ace pilots and fighters specializing in high-speed vehicular combat. Sagramor is in charge of the hot-headed recruits of Tarask Division, who make up the recklessly brave assault team of the Knight. Last but not least, Bedivere leads the Kraken section's elite warriors to battle against incarnations of the Lords of the Anathema. Other seats at the Round Table remain vacant, waiting only for capable knights to prove their valorous deeds that they are worthy to lead their own section. Some valorous knights are chosen to become squires, operating outside of the divisions and directly under the orders of a Knight of the Round Table. The PCs are part of this elite. Then we have a thing on the Knights Code. Knights are for the most part fundamentally good people whose fondest wish is to save humanity. They must adhere to a strict code of honor containing principles such as respecting one's superiors, relentlessly opposing the anathema and all its servants, and protecting the innocent. And next we have meta armors, and I'll let you take that.
So there are 14 types of meta armor, with even more to be discovered in the Night campaign, designed to complement each other. The warrior meta armor provides its wearer with great versatility, being able to adapt to any situation. Paladin meta armor is capable of sustaining a higher rate of fire with ranged weaponry than any other armor, and can protect teammates and civilians with localized force field dome. Priest armor is able to repair other armors and create both simple and complex structures out of its thin air thanks to nanomachines. Warmaster meta armor can generate impulses enhancing the performance of other armors and pinpoint enemy weakness. Rogue allows its wearer to turn invisible for short bursts of time. Bard manipulates holographic fields, allowing its wearer to look like anyone or anything. Ranger armor sports a polymorphic rifle capable of producing any type of ammunition with all kinds of devastating effects. Wizard creates blinding waves of light and remotely manipulates plasma. Barbarian can grow to be several additional meters taller, gaining fearsome strength and destructive power. Scion can eavesdrop on communications between creatures of the darkness and take control of them. The monk can use the substance called Element Alpha, found originally in the darkness, to create beams and waves of dark destructive energy. Sorcerer has a metamorphic body and can phase, stretch, and reinforce itself at a whim, changing its own limbs into weapons. Druid armor uses nanomachines to surround itself with mechanical companions, and rumors of a necromancer armor abound, but so far no proof of its existence or purpose has been found. In addition to the impressive suits of armor, each knight has access to a range of weapons and modules which allow them to fill as many roles as necessary. Combat, protection, infiltration, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So a good solid 14 classes right out of the gate.
Yeah.
They all kind of do what you would expect their theming to do in a futuristic setting.
Mm-hmm.
Except possibly Necromancer, but we'll see if there's anything more on that in this quick start.
I doubt there will be.
Yeah, it's probably going to be in the full release.
Mm-hmm. So then we get to game mechanics. Knight's game mechanic, called the combo system, is straightforward and easy to grasp, relying on player descriptions of their actions. So we're going the feng shui route. Aspects and characteristics start. Each character is defined by 5 aspects, each of which governs 3 characteristics, for a total of 15 skills. Aspects are the major defining traits of a given player character, whereas characteristics are more specific skill sets. Flesh represents the vigor, body's health, strength, physical attractiveness, and appearance, which has the characteristics movement, strength, and endurance. Beast represents instincts, reflexes, and sharpness of senses. Has associated with it aggressiveness, combat, and instinct. It should be noted that combat is specifically melee combat. Machine represents cold calculation as well as detached planning and memorizing, which has the ranged knowledge and tech characteristics. Lady represents charm, charisma, and the ability to attract others. Has the aura, eloquence, and composure characteristics. Aura is meant to be magnetism, not anything magical in that sense. And mask represents the ability to demonstrate duplicity, deception, or stealth, and has the stealth, dexterity, and acuity characteristics. Then we get to the combo system. To perform an action with an uncertain outcome, the player character, hereafter referred to as PC, must combine 2 different characteristics. The first of these, known as the base characteristic, or base, is usually chosen by the game master. The other is chosen by the player, who may or should justify their choice by describing how they intend to perform the action. The resulting pair of characteristics is known as the combo. Depending on how hard the action is, the player's description, and how applicable the GM judges the combo to be, the GM then decides on a difficulty for the skill check. And we have dice rolls. Once the combo has been chosen, the player rolls a number of 6-sided dice equal to the sum of the two characteristics used. Even numbers are successes, to which may be added automatic successes from overdrives, which we'll get to later. And opposition. In the case of a skill check against an opponent, the GM does not choose a difficulty. Rather, they select a base score from the NPC's stat sheet, choosing an appropriate aspect for the test. NPCs do not have individual characteristics. Once the aspect has been selected, the GM divides it by 2, rounded up, to determine the test difficulty. In a combat situation, the defense for melee or reaction against ranged weapons values are used without having. And we have critical failure. If the player fails to get a single success on their dice roll, even if they have automatic successes via overdrives, then the action fails automatically, often in a tragic or disastrous manner. It's up to the GM to decide what dire consequences there might be. Then we have a great feat. A great feat is the opposite of a critical failure. When all the dice thrown for a test are successes, the PC may roll them again, but only once, and add any further successes to their previous result. Overdrives, however, are only added once. So in order to get a crit in this game, getting a botch or a crit is a case of all. If you roll and you get no successes, you botch. If you roll and you get boxcars, or rather all evens, I should say, then you succeed. Which I could see some people looking at that and saying that it sounds like crits and botches are going to be really hard to do, but keep in mind that all you need for something to be a success is for it to be an even.
I do think it's going to be a pretty low chance of either happening, but I don't think it's going to be like it's rarely going to come up.
Then we have the difficulty levels, which basically the number of even dice you would need. It goes from easy, difficulty 1, to impossible, difficulty 15. And I'll let you handle the rest of this page, going from cooperating.
So, for most actions, the PCs can choose to help each other in order to improve their chances of success. Once the PC performing the action has decided which characteristics are going to be used for the skill check, one of several helpers, 3 at most, can roll a number of dice equal to 1 and only 1 of their own characteristics. No characteristics can be used more than once in the skill check, either by the PC or the helpers. Any additional successes that the helpers roll are added to the success total of the PC attempting the check. Cooperation is always subject to GM approval and may be considered impossible in certain situations. Scenes and conflict phases. A night game session is divided into scenes and conflict phases. Scenes are units of time and places during which the PCs can act freely, in whatever order they wish. A conflict phase, on the other hand, can happen at any point during a scene or between scenes. Conflicts are the moments when opposition arises between PCs or PCs and one of several NPCs, and the need for solving matters with dice rolls arises. Then turns. Unlike relatively free scenes, conflict phases always happen in a turn-based manner. Each actor involved in the action taking turns at their initiative, starting with the highest, ending with the lowest, until conflict resolved. On average, a turn lasts 6 to 10 seconds, and each PC may, in this time frame, perform 1 move action and 1 combat action. A move action can be at best of supplementary actions, such as moving around, using small items, waving and gesturing, or activating some armor modules and effects. Combat actions aimed at solving the phase's conflict. This can be attacking in battle, making an important point in an argument, or performing a complicated activity. Combat actions always require a dice roll. A PC may choose to downgrade their combat action to a move action. So it sounds like you're going to be using kind of the same kind of combat phase for even like certain non-combat activities. As they mention here, making an important point in an argument. That'd be interesting, seeing a court case handled like a typical combat session.
I don't know. Trial by combat is a thing.
That do. And then calculated scores. Initiative. Initiative represents how quickly you act. At the start of a conflict phase, initiative is determined by adding a total of 3d6. A total of 3d6, 3 to the character's initiative score. That reads a little weird.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if that 3 is just not supposed to be written there. And just adding a total of 3d6 to the character's initiative score.
Mm-hmm.
But should a PC wish to delay their action, they may, but their whole turn must be played at the same time, both actions at once. Once the next turn starts, the character can act at the initiative they determined for this scene. It's weird a lot of games don't specify what happens when you delay your turn. So I kind of like this one does.
Mm-hmm.
But then we get defense. Defense is the score that must be beaten in order to strike an opponent and deal weapon damage, which represents all types of actions such as parrying and dodging. Reactions. In ranged combat, reaction is a score that must be beaten in order to hit an opponent and deal damage to them. This represents all types of actions, dodging, seeking cover, so on.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Then we have damage and survival. When a PC or NPC scores higher than their opponent's defense or reaction value, they inflict damage in the form of one of two types. A weapon's damage value is an indicator of the direct physical harm it inflicts on an NPC or PC or NPC target. Damage is subtracted from the health of the target or their armor points if they have any. Damage is usually the sum of a number of d6 plus an occasional fixed bonus. Then violence. Violence is a more abstract form of destruction caused by a weapon or module, and is an indicator of its ability to cause widespread mayhem and fear in large groups of enemies, also called bands. Violence is subtracted from a band's cohesion value. Violence is usually the sum of a number of d6 plus an occasional fixed bonus. Then we have HP. When a PC reaches 0 health points, they're at death's door. In this state, the most they can do, I don't know why I read that wrong, is crawl to safety. If no medical assistance is given in the next 3 turns, they succumb to their wounds and die. Then we have healing. Health points are regained at a rate of 1 point every 6 hours rest while away on a mission. They can be recovered much faster thanks to injections from a health nod, a type of automatic syringe. Then we have fighting with improvised weapons as a sidebar. Basically, in appropriate locales, characters in barbarian armor or equipped with strength overdrives can fight using pieces of the scenery. Wrenching free a piece of scenery to serve as an improvised weapon takes a move action, and hitting something with it takes a combat action. The bigger the item used, the higher the damage or violence, anywhere from 2d6 to 12d6, at the GM's discretion. A knight cannot use both his regular weapons and an improvised weapon simultaneously. Makes sense. It's a good way of showing off how to do the whole improv weapon that you see super strength characters use.
I would totally let my players beat people with the corpses of their enemies.
Um,
I don't know why that's the first thing my mind goes to, but
I don't know. I'd probably let my players grab a pole and use that as an improvised ranged attack.
All I'm thinking of is the Mad World yield sign with a picture of a yield sign stuck through someone's head or someone's throat.
I was gonna bring up the Thorkel joke, but I did that joke yesterday. But then we have meta armor, which we've already gone over the basics of it. So let's go right to armor points. Armor points represent an armor's general sturdiness. When these points reach 0, the armor folds. When that happens, it retracts into its wearer's guardian bodysuit, a kind of dry suit with a rudimentary force field and a framework for worn armor to latch onto. APs are comparable to additional HPs in that any damage taken is subtracted from the AP pool first. Armor points can be restored via armor nodes and the priest's meta armor special ability. While APs afford a great deal of protection to a character, they do not render them entirely immune to trauma. Whenever damage is received, for every 5 points inflicted to their AP pool, the wearer also reduces their HP by 1 to reflect the character in the suit taking part of the blow. I actually like that because um, it's acknowledging the fact that getting hit, even if armor protects you, the energy transfer still happens.
Yeah.
You know, like how people can have broken ribs even though they're getting shot with a getting shot while wearing Kevlar. Yeah, it might stop the bullets, but the bullet's still going stupid fast.
It's still messing your ass up for a while.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Don't get shot even if you're wearing Kevlar for fun, kids.
Mm-hmm. So then we have energy points. Each meta armor has an energy point pool. These points are spent when activating most modules and special abilities. If an armor's energy points equal 0, the PC can no longer use any modules or gain advantages linked to their overdrives. EPs recharge at a rate of 6 per hour's rest or by using energy nodes. So then we have force field. An armor's force field is subtracted from all damage a PC takes. If damage inflicted is reduced to 0 thanks to a force field, then it is simply ignored. Let's see, and then we have overdrive. An overdrive in a characteristic provides one automatic success in any skill check the characteristic is used for, whether it is the base characteristic or part of the combo. If both characteristics of a skill check have an overdrive, 2 automatic successes are added to the success total of the check. Should the character have more than one overdrive in a given characteristic, the successes are added up. See, and then we have hope. And actually, I'll let you take that part.
So, a character's hope score can fluctuate due to a variety of factors. When the GM deems it necessary, he may ask for a hope check symbolizing a character's steadfast or faltering determination when faced with particularly gruesome situations. The skill check always uses the aggressiveness and composure characteristic combo against the difficulty the GM chooses. If the PC succeeds at the check, then all is well and nothing happens. On an unsuccessful check, they lose 1d6 hope points, or more at the GM's discretion. When a PC's hope score drops below 10, they use 1 fewer die per score below 10 in all rolls they make. If a PC loses all of their hope points, then they become a Black Knight, a hopeless. The GM proceeds to take control of them as they face their former allies. So yeah, just completely losing hope. I kind of like mechanics like this in a game like this, just because it feels so natural for the setting. Like, no one's going to be immune from the despair of a setting like this. Then we go on to heroism. To obtain heroism, each individual PC can stock up to 6 points. They start with none, but the GM can reward particularly brave and spectacular actions and initiatives by giving points as they see fit. A point can be spent by the PC on one of the following ways. Shrug off a death's door effect by going back up to 1 hit point. The heroism point must be spent just as the character loses the last health point. Ignore the loss of a character's last health point in the same manner as ignoring their last health point. Immediately re-roll any dice roll they make. Inflict maximum damage or violence on a given attack. Add a third characteristic to a combo, including OD bonuses if applicable. The heroism point must be spent before any dice are rolled. And playing an
Heroism definitely sounds like the extra effort mechanic for this game.
yeah. Playing an NPC. NPCs, like PCs, have both aspects and calculated scores. However, they do not have characteristics. When they need to perform a skill check, the GM should choose the most appropriate aspect and use a number of dice equal to the aspect score. Calculated scores are used in the same way as PCs, scores with 2 notable additions. Shield. Shield value is similar to a meta armor's force field value, but can be bypassed by weapons with the anti-anathema effect. And weak point. An enemy's weak point indicates which characteristics to use in a combo in order to halve the enemy's defense and reaction ratings for the attack. And bear in mind that the GM can have an enemy attack with any aspect, so long as it fits the description of the attack. White masked creatures striking from the shadows can use the mask aspect, for instance. Exceptional aspects. An NPC's exceptional aspects are the enemy equivalent of overdrives, adding automatic successes to any dice rolls using the appropriate aspect. They can have additional effects depending on their strength. These are explained in detail in the stat blocks. Abilities. NPCs may have 1 or more abilities, some of which are shared by several NPCs and others unique to a specific NPC. All NPC special abilities are explained and detailed in their stat blocks. Different types of NPCs. There are 4 distinct types of NPCs in Knight. Bands, brutes, badasses, bosses. Bands are enemies that fight in large numbers that cannot be considered individually. They always act at initiative 1, with no additional dice roll. Furthermore, they have 2 unique scores. Cohesion. It's their general hardiness. The only way to lower a band's cohesion is to deal it weapon violence. When a band's cohesion reaches 0, it is considered to be eradicated or routed. And overrun. Bands never attack. Instead, they automatically deal their overrun score when it comes to their turn. Each subsequent turn, the band's overrun score adds to its previous amount of damage dealt. For example, a 5-point overrun score deals 10 damage on the second turn, and 15 on the third, and so on. I will say I really like how that's set up for just swarms of enemies. Brutes are individual enemies of relatively weak strength, attacking mostly in groups of 3, 6, or 12. They can only be wounded by weapon damage. Badasses, powerful NPCs, usually capable of going toe-to-toe with the knight for several rounds. There are 1 to 5 badasses in most battles, depending on how challenging the fight is and the number of PCs. They can only be wounded by weapon damage. And bosses are particularly strong NPCs. They are usually unique beings capable of neutralizing 1 or several PCs. They can only be wounded by weapon damage.
Let's see. Then it goes into the introductory scenario called an arc in the dark. I should be mad at that bit of rhyming, but
As I say, we'll pretty much skip past this, and I'll note after this, we do have pre-made characters. And a couple more things that might be worth going into with the weapon module characteristics and weapon module effects. I don't think we'll go through every effect, but
But I will note I do like this little diagram regarding the standard knight meta armor technology.
Oh yeah, it's basically a breakdown of what all the different portions do, where everything's located on your suit.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessary for the game mechanics, but it's one of those things that it adds a nice touch to the game.
Yep. So then we have pre-made. So for weapon and module characteristics, we have damage and violence, which we already covered how that works. Range, the range of the effective distance. The range is contact, which is 2 meters or less, basically any melee weapon. Short, 2 to 15 meters. Medium, 15 to 50 meters. Long, 50 to 300 meters. And far, further than 300 meters. Let's see then, energy, how many energy points are consumed when using the thing. Duration, how long a module becomes active, whether it be instant, X turns/seconds, self-explanatory, one scene or one conflict phase. I feel like scene as a time measurement in TTRPGs is underutilized. And until deactivated. So then we have activation, i.e., how you activate it, whether it's none, so it's a free action, though you can't use it more than once on a turn. Move action and combat action, as well as one turn, i.e., full round. Then we have weapon and module effects. Anti-anathema basically ignores shield and exceptional flesh aspect values. Anti-vehicle inflicts regular damage instead of having its damage divided by 10. Armor piercing X ignores X amount of armor when attacking. Assisted aim, when a skill check is made to hit a target with the weapon, each success rolled in excess of those required deals 1 additional point of damage or violence. Barrage X, instead of attacking the user, this weapon may forfeit their combat action and choose to lower the defense and reaction score of the enemy NPC or band by X until the start of the user's next turn, allowing their allies to hit the target with less difficulty. No skill check is required. The effect is automatically applied. Several barrage effects can be stacked. So, suppressive fire, pinning them down. Then we have destructive. If this weapon inflicts damage to a target's armor points, 2d6 additional points of damage are immediately added to the total damage dealt. So long as at least 1 AP of damage is dealt, destructive immediately takes effect. And fine crafted. When this weapon is used, the PC adds their dexterity characteristic, plus 1 point per overdrive, to its damage, on top of any existing modifier. And interference X. The target of this weapon loses its next X actions. This effect only applies to enemies made of or relying primarily on technological components. Multiple interference and stun effects do not stack. And for the remaining tags, I'll let you take that.
We get to then Light X. When a character strikes an Anathema NPC or banned with this weapon, the defense and reaction values are lowered X points until the end of the attacker's next initiative round. The effects cannot stack multiple times. Marking. Weapon can mark a target once per turn. Its wielder and their allies gain 1 automatic success on any skill check made to hit the marked target and ignores any critical failure results on these checks. No skill check is required to mark a target, and its range is that of the weapon used. Ongoing damage X. Weapon deals X damage each turn for 1d6 turns. These points of damage ignore force field and shield. The effect only ends if appropriate measures, antitoxins, dousing flames, are taken or if the effect runs its course. Ongoing damage effects do not stack. Penetrating, ignores X amount of force field. Precise, when the weapon is used, its wielder adds their ranged characteristic, +1 per point of overdrive to their damage, on top of any existing modifiers. Safe shot, the wielder may fire it without incurring any difficulty penalties due to hiding behind cover. Silence, the character using the weapon cannot be located because of its use. If this effect is present on a weapon and used during a surprise attack, or if the user is in ghost mode, they add their stealth characteristic to their damage. Spread X, the weapon can hit and deal damage to several enemies, so long as they are no farther than 2 meters away from each other. X is the number of enemies the weapons can harm in one attack. Only one skill check to hit is required against one of the enemies. Nearby targets take all the damage and other effects the weapon may deal, so long as the skill check exceeds their defense or reaction. Beware, though, that should this weapon be used against enemies in melee combat with an ally, they may also take damage. Stun X, the skill check to hit with this weapon is higher than if the skill check to hit with this weapon is higher than the target's flesh aspect, then they lose their next X actions. This has no effect on bans. This effect cannot be applied to the target that is already stunned. Under certain circumstances, a stun effect may be automatic as long as the skill check to hit succeeds. Twin Akimbo. When two identical weapons with Twin Akimbo are used with the Akimbo combat style, the penalty to attack checks is reduced by 2. Only 1 die penalty instead of 3. Two hands, character must use both hands. Using this weapon with the effect one-handed is simply impossible. Weighted. When using this weapon, its wielder adds twice their strength characteristic to the damage. And wounding. If this weapon inflicts damage to the target's health points, 2d6 additional points of damage are immediately added to the total damage dealt. So long as at least 1 hit point of damage is dealt, wounding immediately takes effect.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get kind of like a couple nice little charts here.
Yep. So
and then all of the pre-builts.
Mm-hmm.
2 pages each.
Yep. So it goes into nods, which are your main way of going to be your main way of healing. Smart grenades, which have a damage and violence of 3d6. It has the effect of clip 5, i.e., you only got 5 grenades. Although since they're smart grenades, it's essentially a modular grenade. It's kind of, I keep thinking of like a grenade version of the Lawmaster. So one mode you might want to use shrapnel, another you might want to use EMP, another you might want to use AP. Then we have the pre-gens proper. And I think one of the main things to take away is that it is doing the attribute plus skill approach when it comes to characteristics, which I don't know. There's a small part of me that thought it'd be interesting if it was just all skills. So in other words, this combo system is. I'd have liked to see something a little more freeform, but this sort of attribute and skill setup, it's standard. Let's see, health points are 45. Defense is 6. Reaction is 1. Initiative is 2. Contact points is 3. Hope points is 50. Then we have the meta armor The first pre-gen, Peter Watts, aka Tempest, uses the Barbarian meta armor, which has 60 armor points, 60 energy points, and a force field of 12.
Now, I'll note there's a number of things you'll see on here where I didn't really get into much detail here in this quick start.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't really know too much about archetypes, but we have archetype outlaw in this guy. Advantages and disadvantages it hasn't really talked about, but there's a few listed on each of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with motivations. Let's see. So we also don't really know what the initial division, crest, archetype, great deed, if those are imparting any of these abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Are they all getting choosed? There's a fair bit we don't really know about how this sheet gets made from this quick start.
Yeah.
Which I think that is fine. I don't think the quick start needs to have like a full detailed character creation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to play it through, though, you do still have at least the full character sheet, so you'll probably be able to function fine without knowing all of that. So I'm not going to really knock it for not giving us all that information yet.
Mm-hmm. Uh, though I am noticing that that you do have some weapons that do better against as direct damage and some that work better as doing violence damage. I'm not entirely sure what contact points is supposed to be, and I did check and I couldn't find what it's supposed to be. Um, since they're talking about.
Assume it'd come up somewhere in the actual play,
Mm-hmm.
which, again, we weren't going over that.
Actually, no. When I do a search for contact points, it just gives me the pre-gens.
Huh.
Uh,
So my guess is it doesn't come up here yet, so who knows what that actually means then.
um, One other thing that that I didn't see is when it comes to when it comes to force field, is that a form of temp HP like a regenerating shield, or is it something else? Because a good chunk of them have force fields of like 12. And when it comes to the amount of damage that's seen, uh, like one of the monsters called the 13 Masks, um, has a ranged weapon that does 3d6 plus 6 damage. Would that mean that it's going to be subtracted from 12 when when it's hitting force field? I'm guessing.
Yeah, just because of how like the piercing thing was already a thing, I assume it's effectively working like DR, to where it's just always 12 off the attacks hitting you,
Mm-hmm.
barring other circumstances.
I guess that would make
But I
sense
only
because
kind of guessed that because of the piercing modules we looked over.
yeah, I'm guessing that's the case because otherwise it wouldn't make sense to have two different forms of temp HP.
Yeah.
Because you already have a form of temp HP through armor. So the way I think it's supposed to go is damage is rolled, then the damage is subtracted from force field, and if there's anything left over, then it's subtracted from armor. And once armor's run out, then it goes into hit points.
That's how I was viewing it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do wish this had a little more detail on that, so we're not having to kind of figure it out. Even though it is the quick start, that's kind of important. So there probably are some bits of this that could have been detailed a little better, just for ease of somebody jumping in,
Hmm.
especially if they haven't played as many games as me or you have.
Yeah, I will say that one it at first I thought that you were only going to have one, you're only going to have like one overdrive per skill. I know they're called characteristics in this, but I'm calling them skills just because old habits die hard.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that after looking at this, that's not exactly the case. Uh, especially, and even though overdrives are technically an automatic success, the vibe that I get is that you can't use it to automatically succeed at certain tasks. It's more that it helps make your successes better.
It just seems to me like it's there to kind of make it a little easier. Again, it's basically just how you'd call a +2 to a skill in, say, D&D and Pathfinder. It's going to make hitting your target a little bit easier. That's kind of how I looked at it. Again, though, I think that might just be they didn't get as specific as they probably should have in this quick start for how a few of these things worked.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to give them the benefit of the doubt there and say when we get like the full book, it's going to be a lot clearer how that's
Yeah.
supposed to work.
Now, this game also has talked um at about being a customizable arsenal. The the thing that I'm hoping is that it is customizable without being analysis paralysis. I do have a feeling that it's not going, even though we have meta armors named after character classes, it's not going to be strictly classes because we didn't see anything resembling levels.
Yeah, which it does wonder like, is there going to be like a progression system of some kind, strengthening your characters?
I would imagine so.
And
I
how would
have
that look?
I have a feeling it's going to be one of those XP as currency things. Though if I'm wrong, I will eat crow on that front.
I could see him going either way. They could do something like that. I don't think levels would really pose a problem for what I've seen so far. I don't know if you're going to be tied down to one suit or not.
Um, I think the reason why I think it's going to be semi-freeform is because of the concept of modules.
Yeah.
The the vibe that I'm getting is that you essentially have some sort of slot like approach. The I guess the best way for me to put it is the is something akin to the pick 10 system. In fact, I'd argue utilizing the pick 10 system would be very interesting in a TTRPG.
Yeah.
And
That said, I don't think we really have enough information to even give a solid guess as to how this is going to work
yeah,
for advancement.
that's why I'm keeping a close eye
Yeah.
on this particular project and the backer kit. I know that um Abraham is doing a deep dive, but he has access to the to either an untranslated or a translated advanced copy, and I don't. So we'll see how things play out. But overall, I'd say this was an interesting one. We got a lot more mileage than I thought we would out of this one. If nothing
Again,
else,
oh, go on.
the concept that it's presenting is one that I find fascinating. I will be very interesting to see how they handle my boys with the monk meta armor.
Yeah, like it's got my interest.
Mm-hmm.
I like the setting. By and large, how the system works is pretty simple and easy to understand. I do wish there were a few things that they were a little more clear on, as we were just talking earlier. There's a few things we're not really sure how it's supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to give them a little slack with the quick start for that. And assume the full book's going to have more details.
Yeah, and that'll be now whether or not I'll do that as a Valley of the Judged. It depends on when it comes out and what the schedule looks like. Because odds are I'm probably going to back it on BackerKit or whatever crowdfund they end up using. I think they're using BackerKit, but I'm just working on what I know so far. At the very least, it's good. It's good to see more from the international scene, and especially more. Especially, I'm not seeing this. I was gonna say I'm not seeing this whole classes as armor thing in more ubiquitous role-playing games, but we already kind of have that with Eldritch Sands. I covered that a while ago. This is a different take, and it's one I will no doubt enjoy. But with that said, that will do it for this particular episode of Valley of the Judged. I'll be back here tomorrow with Zan as we continue our look through Gods of Metal Ragnarok. And of course, I've got plenty more shenanigans coming down the pipe over the next few days. So until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.